Coming in at number 5, we've got the Angels of Paradiso. Like I said, not all the angels out there are intrinsically linked to major religions. Some are inspired by said worship, but can take on totally new and unimaginably freaky forms when inserted into certain narratives. Enter Bayonetta, ancient gun-toting, hair-wielding witch with a hate-on for these divine beings. In the combo-fueled games, players take control of what Sarah Palin wishes she was in order to punch, kick, whip, and torture the ever-living crap out of these radiant figures. It ends up being a little deeper than that, of course, but I'll leave that to Top 10 Gaming or something. I specifically want to talk about how terrifying the angels in this game are. Taking inspiration from all sorts of pre-existing angels, although the Judeo-Christian is extra strong, these gold and marble-skinned freaks of fancy are down to annihilate anything that gets in their way. The angels are divided into 4 spheres of influence, each increasing in power. Even the lowly members of the 3rd sphere are terribly powerful and look the part too. Bayonetta can handle them no problem, but imagine facing down one of these monstrosities on your own. Inhuman in form, but often adorning porcelain human-shaped masks, these things are the embodiment of uncanny valley nastiness. And as the games progress, these holy abominations get freakier and freakier. Some of the smaller ones have quasi-human figures, but geez. The big angels are exactly what you would expect from a biblical angel of some sort, all fire and whirling parts. Like, look at Belief. This thing has dinosaur legs and an enormous tentacle arm. Then there's Enchant, who reminds me of the wheels that are said to accompany cherubim. And of course, who could forget Fortitudo, the 2-headed dragon with a gigantic upside-down human face as a shield/diaper. These things are incredibly designed and super terrifying because of it. If I had to choose between fighting these things and demons from another game's universe, you know I'd take the demons every time. One has to wonder, who would win? The angels from Bayonetta or the demons from Doom? Or even more controversial, and don't kill me for this one, Bayonetta versus Doom Guy. I'm not even gonna weigh in for fear that I'll incense 1 million fans on either side. So I'll leave you with the mental image of a marauder fighting Lustitia. Coming in at number 4, we've got Evangelion's Angels. Oh yeah, we're not done with the alternate universe angels quite yet. If you thought some of the angels featured throughout Bayonetta were freaky, we're just getting started. Context matters when you're looking for how scary something is, and in this case, the angels from Evangelion are probably a whole lot freakier than the ones we've previously mentioned. Think about it, 15 years after a catastrophe the likes of which the world has never seen, and then all of a sudden some inhuman, godlike creatures touch down and start to destroy everything. Worse still, the only way to fight these things is to put some traumatized teens into enormous biomechs and make them fight to the death. That is a scary situation. There have been plenty of different interpretations of these angels over the years, with some folks theorizing that they represent some sort of messenger from beyond our understanding of the world, and others think that they're a proto-form of life coming back to reclaim the earth. Regardless of how you understand their purpose, they're extremely powerful, impossible to negotiate with, and looking to methodically eliminate everyone and everything on the planet. And while some of them have vaguely humanoid shapes and relatively easily understood powers, others can be absolutely eldritch in nature. Take Lilith for example. It takes on the appearance of a gigantic black and white sphere with an impenetrable defense. Anything that attempts to hit it will phase right through it, and Evas that go up against it often end up in its pocket dimension. Or how about Uriel? Appearing to be an enormous bird made of light that can ruin your brain from outer space. When Asuka went to fight it, she ended up experiencing her own personal hell. She relived all of her darkest and most painful memories during the fight and could only eventually take it down by using the Lance of Longinus, a weapon that can cut through any AT field. Then there's Shamshel, who looks like an enormous member. Each angel from Evangelion is terrifying in its own way, and they each find new ways to make the EVA pilots' lives living hell. And those are all the people that can actually do something about these monsters. A regular person just has to sit back and watch as these cosmic entities plow through Earth's defenses like a bull in a china shop. Goodness gracious. And don't even get me started on the beings like Adam and Lilith. Maybe next time. Coming in at number 3, we've got Legion. One person can be many things, but in this case, one demon is actually many demons. And these demons were so nasty, so evil, that Jesus himself had to exorcise them. Holy smokes, right? Legion is quite popular in the pop culture pantheon, and many famous exorcisms and related events seem to use him as the prime example. With so many demons dwelling within one main demonic form, they can take over the souls of people relatively easily and with varied results. However, all of the demons that make up Legion act as a sort of hive mind. They all have the same knowledge, thoughts, and reactions to things, and if one demon from the collective experiences something, they're all aware of it. With all of that knowledge and the ability to spread out all over the place, Legion can be a terrifying adversary. And even though Jesus does manage to send Legion back to hell in the Bible, there isn't much guaranteeing that many parts of Legion can't come back. Most folks only experience Legion as individual parts too. This is when the demon is at its weakest, as each individual piece of the whole only holds so much power. Were Legion to assemble all of the many together, we could be in trouble. Imagine all the limbs. Coming in at number 2, we've got Vetus. Corruption. Such a classic human form of folly. We work so hard to avoid it and even do our best to prop up those who remain pure of heart and purpose, but corruption spreads pretty much no matter what. We can thank Vetus for that. Second in command to Lucifer himself, this is the demon who wants to tempt holy people away from their chosen path. Even the most pious has a chance of being drawn in by this demon. He works very hard at figuring out people's deepest desires and then encouraging them to pervert everything they believe in to achieve said goals. Oftentimes these desires are less than socially acceptable, and at worst they can be quite taboo. Does Vetus care that he's ruining lives? Probably not. He takes on different forms to be extra convincing and makes sure to really sweeten the deal whenever he can. However, there is a way you can tell if Vetus is trying to tempt you. He only speaks in rhyme. Interesting, right? Hold on, there's a form of communication that almost exclusively communicates in rhyme and tells people to act in all sorts of wild and depraved ways. Music! Pop music specifically, but hey, do you think that Vetus is communicating with modern folks through the tunes we so often hear on the radio, telling us to consume, to cavort, to consummate? That's insidious. And finally at number 1, we've got Beelzebub. Speaking of music, how many songs explicitly reference Beelzebub? I can think of 2 right now, Bohemian Rhapsody and Beelzebub. I'm sure there are plenty more, but you can drop those in the comments. As you do that, I'll continue on my way talking about this demon. Beelzebub, the Lord of the Flies, the devil, but also maybe not the devil. There's so much to say about this particular demon and so little time in which to do it. I'll see what I can do with what we've got today. So the Lord of the Flies may be associated with literature read in schools these days, but back before we had a tale of British boys losing their minds on an island, that association with insects was filthy. Ruling over flies meant you had domain over demonic excrement and rot. Not a good thing, right? Throughout history, people have blamed Beelzebub for all sorts of things. He was closely associated with the Salem witch trials and cited often when folks were put to death. Plus, years after that was called off, he was again referenced in many exorcisms, both infamous and unknown. All of this pales in comparison to his actual standing in hell though, where he is known as the Prince of Demons, and rules over the other basement dwellers with an iron fist. His ultimate goal is to destroy the world, and it seems as though he's been planning this for ages, tricking people into worshipping false idols, commanding other infernal beings, and sowing seeds of discontent. Nobody's doing it quite like Beelzebub. I'd recommend learning a song wicked enough to defeat the devil, otherwise you're probably ending up going down to hell with it. Coming in at number 5, we've got Florus. You know an angel turned demon is wicked when it shows up in essentially every RPG going, video game or not. Florus is just such a demon, making appearances in the likes of Shin Megami Tensei, Pathfinder, hell, there's even a cool Gundam named after him. At that point, you just have to accept that it is a super wicked, super powerful demon with lots to bring to the table. He goes by many names, however, so if you run into someone named Flavrus, Haurus, Horus, or Havrus, you should also be on guard. His power is matched by few, and as such, Florus is a great Duke of Hell. It always amazes me how much hierarchy and organization goes on down in the underworld. Good for them, the underclass, organizing to rise up against their oppressors. As a great duke, Florus presides over some 36 legions of demons, all powerful in their own right. If a battle between heaven and hell were to break out once again, you can bet that they'd make one hell of an impact. Sorry about that. If one wishes to summon Florus, they'd better be ready. He can be quite the useful companion, as he speaks truth about all things past, present, and future. So by asking him questions, you too can have knowledge of the seemingly unknowable. Imagine the possibilities. However, and we've seen stuff like this before, to ensure the truthfulness of his answers, the asker must first compel Florus to stand in a magic triangle. Fail to do this, and he will do all he can to trick and bamboozle, and nobody wants to be bamboozled by a demon. So find that 3-sided emblem and ask away. Figure out where your dad went when he left to buy milk. Find out if your grade school crush ever liked you back. See if you can puzzle out the key to godhood. One of those might be a little heavier than the others, but you get the idea. In addition to being all-knowing, Florus is extremely powerful. He has the ability to literally burn all of his conjurer's enemies in a shower of hellfire. So if you're not very well liked or too powerful for your own good, this is a good demon to conjure. Apparently this burning applies to other demons who may be against mortals, which can come in handy for sure. I doubt this makes him very popular among his demon compatriots, but hey. He can also be used to help the conjurer resist all temptations. Knowledge, enemy deletion, and temptation resist, all in the form of a terrible leopard man. You have to wonder if the heavens regret letting Florus go. Coming in at number 4, we've got Valak. You probably recognize his name too. Although the depiction of this demon in The Conjuring is far from the traditional one, but movies will do what they do. The book is always better, right? Upon first glance, one might make the mistake of assuming that Valak is a cute little cherubic boy, angel wings and all. However, take a closer look at the whole picture and you'll see what's really going on here. This cute, innocent, angelic child is actually a demon riding upon the back of a two-headed dragon. First of all, that's so sick. Secondly, what a ballsy move, retaining the angelic form while at the same time mounting a twin-domed fire-breathing terror. So less nun-like and more Bayonetta angel-like. It's cool either way, but which creature is more wicked in the end? Valak is a president of hell with leadership over 30 legions of demons. So while he might not be quite as powerful as our boy Florus, he definitely pulls his weight. He's also attributed with the power to find hidden treasure, so if gold and silver and precious stones are your thing, maybe consider finding this dragon rider. I'm sure pirates would have loved this guy, although anybody in a boat for months at a time might see a little boy on a winged worm and think, oh, I've gone insane. Valak is also proficient at finding another thing, which to most people might be a little less precious. He is a serpent dowser, able to locate, reveal, and render harmless all varieties of snakes. So if you've got some stuff in common with Indiana Jones, it could be nice. Valak doesn't just nerf the snakes though, he can also control the slithering creatures. And if you've ever played D&D with a low to mid-level druid, you'll know just how useful a handful of poisonous serpents can be. Treasure, snakes, riding upon untraditional steeds. Maybe this angel-turned-demon did preside over Indiana Jones. Coming in at number 3, we've got Azrael. Back to some more traditional angels now, which, even if they're not quite as delicately fleshed out as some of the storylines from our previous entries, provided inspiration for these more in-depth atrocities. The OGs always command respect. So let's talk about the Archangel of Death, Azrael. A lot of folks have conceptions of the Grim Reaper and similar entities from across time. Azrael plays this role in Islam, carrying souls to the afterlife and coming for those whose time is up. Something tells me that a lot more people would go in peace if Azrael was a little, well, less abjectly horrifying. It's said that he has 4 faces, 4,000 wings, and a body covered in eyes and tongues. Now, at first, the eyes and tongues thing isn't so bad. Like, it's bad, but not the worst thing ever. But apparently, there is one for every human on Earth, which, to me anyways, is pretty much impossible to imagine. Think about all of the writhing, blinking madness embedded in this angel's skin and what that might look like as he comes to carry your soul away. No thank you. Coming in at number 2, we've got Samael. Another famous Archangel of Death is Samael. More prevalent in Talmudic lore, his name can mean anything from the poison of God, venom of God, or blindness of God. He kills at the behest of God and does so often and with impunity. Off to a good start. He's known to play a similar role to Lucifer across different tales and is often tasked with destroying sinners, which is terrifying to me personally. Another name that Samael is known by is the Seducer, and while he is known to consort with other celestial beings, even mating with the 4 angels of sacred prostitution, he's not seducing humans in the traditional manner. Instead, he's known to seduce people into acts of evil, drawing them out and causing them to sin so he can do away with them. Narc. There's also the story of him attempting to kill a baby that was still in the womb, which is a pretty out there idea for an angel, don't you think? Apparently, there was a discrepancy about which of 2 unborn twins would inherit the earth, and Samael's answer was to simply kill one of them before it could be born. This is one angel that will not be imparting you with blessings, no sir. And finally, at number 1, we've got Lucifer. Did you really think I was gonna get through 2 lists without talking about the premier fallen angel himself? Come on. Falling victim to pride, the Archangel Lucifer decided to stage an uprising against God. In doing so, he convinced a good portion of the angels to take up arms and go to war against the rest of the heavenly bodies. This resulted in Michael and a whole lot of other angels striking Lucifer down, banishing him to hell, and giving him the new name, Satan. Now, if Samael seduces humans to sin in order to bring them out of the woodwork, Satan does it as a pure act of evil. He now rules over hell and commands armies of demons and sinners. This alone should put him at the top of the worse than demons list. He appears in many texts throughout history, with a particularly famous one being in Dante's Inferno. Here he's half frozen at the center of the ninth circle of hell, gnawing on the ultimate sinners with his multiple faces. He's also depicted in many famous works of art, often as a hideous beast meant to terrify, but also as a powerful commander, leading his armies of the damned. Lucifer is a powerful cultural force, acting as the antithesis to God. You can't have good without evil, and Lucifer plays the latter role very well. More angels for your compendium. Just try not to think about them right before you go to bed, you know? It's tough to sleep when you picture horrible heavenly figures flying around above you.
In at number 5, we have Beelzebub. Beelzebub is a former seraph turned high-ranking demon. He is considered one of the 7 princes of hell and oversees the Order of the Fly. He, alongside Satan and Lucifer, form the triumvirate of hell and is one of the supreme monarchs of the Inferno. Beelzebub was an angel who was once under the Archangel Gabriel. Beelzebub fell and joined with Lucifer to become a high-ranking demon in hell. In Catholic demonology, he is sometimes considered to be one of the first 3 angels to fall from heaven, along with Lucifer and Leviathan. Beelzebub is the chief lieutenant of Lucifer and is one of the most loyal to the morning star. Beelzebub is seen as being associated with pride or gluttony depending on the scholar, and is also the prince of false gods. Flies play a large focus in imagery detailing him, and the malignant spirit can even take the form of flies according to some. Down through history, Beelzebub has been held responsible for many cases of demonic possession. He was also shown to be sowing his influence in Salem, Massachusetts. His name came up repeatedly during the Salem witch trials, the last large-scale public expression of witch hysteria in either North America or Europe. In at number 4, we have Iblis. Iblis, formerly known as Azazel, is a fallen angel turned high-ranking demon and king of hell. Iblis rules over the demons known as the Jinn, where his court is held within the city of Jinnistan. His exact rank in the demonic hierarchy is not known, but he reports directly to both Lucifer and Satan. The Lord of the Jinn is arguably one of the most loyal demons serving under the morning star. After his fall from the heavens, Iblis's body is composed entirely of molten magma, or brimstone, that varies between forms. His original form was a giant swirling ball of flames. After being released, Iblis's form grew tremendously and sprouted 4 arms with an armored head of molten rock. Iblis was an angelic jinn created by God out of Uriel. He stood out amongst the jinn as being unique in appearance and power, but he was no different in the eyes of heaven. When the angels took prisoners, Iblis was one of them and carried them to heaven. Since he, unlike the other jinn, was pious, the angels was impressed by his nobility, and Iblis was allowed to join the company of angels and elevated to their rank. Although he got the outer appearance of an angel, he was still a jinn in essence, thus he was able to choose in terms of free will. After being elevated to the ranks of the angels, Iblis became a leader and teacher of his own choir of angels and a keeper of heaven. God gave him authority over the lower heavens and the earth. Iblis is also considered the leader of those angels who battled the jinn. Therefore, Iblis and his army drove those ancient jinn to the edge of the world. The jinn in response regarded Iblis as a traitor to their own kind and accused him of slithering his way into the ranks of heaven, mainly to avoid persecution at the hands of the angels. When God created Adam, he ordered all the angels and jinn to bow before the new creation. All the angels and jinn bowed down, but Iblis refused to do so. As punishment for his naughtiness, God banished Iblis from heaven and condemned him to hell.
Coming in at number 3, we've got Zapan. Here we go, a true fallen angel. The entities we mentioned before are implied to have been angels at some point, corrupted and brought down to demonhood, but this guy right here has verifiably washed his hands of heaven. When Satan took up arms against God and his supporters, Zapan was right there, ready to lend a hand to the eventual devil. Most demons are probably associated with some sort of fire though, right? Like, they live in hell after all. They're constantly talking about casting people in a lake of fire, but Zapan, he is a true fire lover, an emberhead, an inferno enthusiast, a flame freak. Get this, before he and the other angels were cast out of heaven, he came up with the bright idea to set fire to everything up there. That's right, he was the original arsonist, burning the heavens where he was created to get revenge upon those who would smite him and his fallen friends. So it only makes sense that he would now be a very fiery fiend. In the abyss, he's in charge of constantly stoking the flames, whether by blowing on them with his mouth, fanning them with his hands, or using the emblem most associated with him, his bellows. The furnace would not produce flames as hot without the help of this burning brute. Some just want to watch the world burn. Coming in at number 2, we've got Masta. It's ambiguous as to whether Masta is a fallen angel or simply an angel full of wrath. Either way, he's terrifying. Regardless of the outcome, Masta did indeed begin his career in heaven. For quite some time, he was known for persecuting evil in the name of God. This wasn't done with kindness and light though, it was done through divine punishment, torture, violence, and fear. His name can mean hatred, hostility, enmity, and persecution, so you figure it out. While in heaven, it seems that he was a watcher. However, it's hard to say whether he joined the watchers that indulged in the earthly pleasures that brought about the Nephilim. Some texts refer to him as the father of all evil though, so there's always the possibility that he decided to switch sides. In fact, Masta was a well-documented flatterer of God, and, well, if someone's too close to true power and always flattering, they often have ulterior motives. This bit is further confused when the Watchers are being cleansed from the earth by an incredible flood, and Masta implores God to let him keep and control 1/10 of the remaining demons in order to test humans and weed out the corrupted. So even if he remained an angel of sorts, he also controls a horde of demons and does demonic things, from seducing folks away from goodness and light to carrying out heinous punishments. And finally at number 1, we've got Lucifer. Now how could I go 2 whole lists about angels becoming demons and not mention the most legendary of fallen angels? Lucifer Morningstar. There is all sorts of contention as to whether Lucifer is also Satan and also the devil, or if he's one and not the other, and what each title means specifically, but putting all that aside, let's take a quick look at the story most folks are familiar with. Lucifer was once a beautiful and infallible angel, nearly perfect in all ways. Being so powerful and excellent, Lucifer started to lust after the place of God. His pride became his downfall, as is the case in many tales, and Lucifer was corrupted with sin. In holding himself too highly in his mind, he attempted to take the place of God, and in doing so, started a war in heaven. Coming in at number 5, we've got God's angels from Legion. You know that old notion of a kind and loving God? Well, that's not happening in this movie. No siree. Apparently at some point around 2010, God gave up on humanity and said, it. We've done the whole dividing up of languages so nobody can understand each other. We've done the worldwide flood for a hard reset. What's the way we're gonna take down humanity this time? That's right. Heavenly warfare against folks that have a snowflake's chance in hell of surviving. That is the premise of Legion. God is pissed, so he sends his angelic armies to kill every human on Earth. That is bleak. And they're not like raising people with arrows of light or rapturing up folks real high and then dropping them down. They are stepping right up to the citizens of Earth and tearing them to pieces. It is not a pretty sight. Of course, we kick it all off with an insane grandmother letting a pregnant mom know her baby's gonna burn in hell. She then proceeds to bite a gaping hole in a man's neck and climb all over the walls like a geriatric Spider-Man. Hot start. While that may be the scariest thing that happens here, we've got horde after horde of terrifying angels ready to rain hellfire upon a dusty diner in the middle of nowhere. The winged warriors descend upon this tiny town like swarms of locusts, tearing up anything they can. There are also actual locusts too, just in case you're worried. It is an insurmountable challenge to face down these creatures while keeping humanity's last hope, an unborn child, alive, but Archangel Michael descends to Earth to make it happen. It's a blood-pumping action movie with plenty of horrific scenes. What's not to love? Plus there's that classic bit with the sketchy ice cream man. God, what an image. The wide-mouthed, spindly-limbed dude in a yellow uniform scuttling towards you at top speed. Isn't exactly a movie meant to be taken seriously, but boy, is it fun. Coming in at number 4, we've got the guardian angel from A Dark Song. In the end, this angel did do exactly what it was supposed to do, but all the stuff that led up to its appearance was harrowing. Plus, let's be real, summoning a guardian angel through torture and bloodshed and then having it smite your enemies doesn't seem like something a holy and good person would do. If you're unfamiliar with A Dark Song, we'll summarize it now. After losing her young son, a grieving widow decides to rent a secluded house in Wales. She spends her time there alone, dealing with great sorrow. However, she's got an ulterior motive for being there. She wants to convince a famous occultist to guide her through a ritual to allow her to speak to her son once more. This requires the summoning of a guardian angel who will somehow bring her son's spirit to her. Now, the ritual requires a whole lot of commitment, and that the two stay indoors the entire time. This sounds like a recipe for disaster, and it is. The occultist is a bit of a skis-ball, and after the mother refuses to perform a rite of forgiveness, among other things go a little sideways. They manipulate and each other for a while, but fall into some daily routines and become familiar over time. However, the mother has been keeping a secret. She hasn't been totally honest and is really performing the ritual to get revenge on the person who kidnapped and killed her son. So whenever this angel comes, it won't be one of forgiveness and healing. It will be an angel of vengeance and death. Yikes. With this realization, things get a whole lot worse. To summon this angel, the mother must be killed and reborn, and the occultist sustains a festering wound. Demons begin to infest the house and drive the mother to madness. But in the end, the angel does indeed appear, both glorious and horrifying. But was it worth it? Well, I suppose that's up to the viewer. Would you be able to muster up the strength to forgive the person who killed your child after a life-altering ordeal? That's a tough one.
In at number 3 we have Gadriel. Gadriel, also known as Gadriel, the Wall of God and the Silent Sentinel, is listed as one of the chief cadres of the Gregory of Fallen Angels. He was originally the first angel to guard Eden from any unwelcome guest before Uriel. Gadriel was the angel that originally guarded the Garden of Eden from hostile forces, until Lucifer managed to trick Gadriel into letting Samael and Lilith in. This ruptured the garden's stability, triggering a series of events that caused the fall of man. As punishment for his failure, Gadriel was kicked out from the Garden of Eden. Due to his failure for preventing the adversary from entering the Garden of Eden being tricked by the morning star, Gadriel was shamed and scolded by God and the other angels. In an attempt to rectify his mistakes, Gadriel pleaded with God to bestow upon him a new position as recompense for his previously failed duty. God accepted and moved Gadriel to the Watchers, tasked with observing and guarding mankind alongside 200 other Watcher angels. Unfortunately, Gadriel failed that as well, as he was among the Watchers that joined the others in descending unto earth to teach men forbidden knowledge and fornicate with their daughters. Gadriel had no choice in the matter either, as the Watchers all took on an oath that bound them together, meaning that if one of them commits a sin, they will all be a part of it. Being one of the corrupt Watchers, Gadriel is said to have been responsible for teaching man warfare. In at number 2 we have Belial. Belial, known as Hell's brightest fire, Evil's match and the King of Evil, and one of the 4 crown princes of Hell ruling over the north. Belial is a mighty and powerful king, as he was created right next after Lucifer and is of his order. He appears in the form of a beautiful angel sitting in a chariot of fire and speaks with a comely voice. After the fall of the angels, he was against God and heaven, though likely this was due to his sloth. He would eventually decide to continue to be a part of Stygian council and become a king of hell. He bestows excellent familiars and governs 80 legions of spirits. Whoever summons him must have offerings of gifts or sacrifices, or he will not give true answers to their demands. But even then will not spend more than 1 hour on the truth unless constrained by divine power or his seal, to be worn as a lament by the person who summons him. In the martyrdom of Isaiah, Belial is a demon of lawlessness and the ruler of this world. Belial is also the patron of secrets, domination, and seduction. He is a profane being, reveling in the pleasures and pains of the flesh. Belial was one of the many great angels that joined Lucifer's crusade against the Most High and the tyranny of heaven. Being of Lucifer's order, Belial was a very powerful and respected angel, and as a result was a formidable force during the war in heaven. He was soon defeated and cast out alongside Lucifer and other fallen angels into the abyss, which then became hell. And finally, in at number 1 we have Lilith. Lilith was supposed to be the first wife of Adam. She left the Garden of Eden and became the mother of demons and the supreme empress of hell. She was created by God to be wife of Adam and the mother of humanity. However, she was led astray and was banished. She was originally a storm demon known as Lilitu in ancient Mesopotamian myth around 3000 BC, and she was thought to have been the cause of disease, illness, and death. Lilith is an impeccably beautiful woman, described as the walking definition of feminine beauty alongside Eve herself. In contrast to Eve, who has ginger hair, Lilith originally had platinum blonde hair, fair skin, bright blue eyes. She was also shown to be rather taller than Eve, standing roughly around 6 feet and 3 inches in height. After being driven out of the Garden of Eden, Lilith's hair darkened considerably, having a blackish red coloration with her skin having a light brown pigmentation. Her eyes, which were once sky blue, became a dark yellow. Her hair is also described as being the nighttime sky carefully woven on her head, which is a nod to her shapeshifting into an owl, a nocturnal animal, and her eventually becoming a demon of the night. After becoming the Empress of Hell, Lilith was clothed in only the finest noble attire, which possessed a consistent gothic theme to it, yet demonic in nature. The clothing in question would be at times thin and revealing fabric, usually black or dark royal purple. She grew large curved horns somewhat resembling branched antlers, which had several golden rings clamped around them, and was adorned with jewelry that was rare on Earth and only found in the underworld. Her sclera red with yellow irises and black pupils. Lilith's early fall from grace even prompted her to join the side of the rebel angels during the impending war in heaven, and it was from there she met Satan, who despite having contrasting ideologies possessed a similar frustration and sense of betrayal. In Lilith's case, the angels that would cater to her and Adam would instead drive her out of the garden for her rebellious nature, and more so when she realized that God would only listen to Adam instead of her, thereby thinking that God shares the views of Lilith being second fiddle. After her banishment from heaven and eloping with Satan, Lilith became quite deceptive, cunning, and calculating, to where she even managed to manipulate her sister Eve into finding answers from the Tree of Knowledge to initiate the fall of man. Her treatment and abandonment in heaven made her grow spiteful and vengeful towards the divine, which resulted in her creating the first monsters on Earth that would terrorize the children of Adam and Eve for centuries to come, and her demonic children would drive mankind down into a spiral of chaos, corruption, and sin, turning them away from the light of God. She is also highly opportunistic, ever watchful of the next opportunity to gain power through someone else.
Coming in at number 5, we've got the Angel of Death. We'll start off with a no-brainer. If you summon the Angel of Death, you're probably gonna witness some death. Or quite possibly, participate in some death. Whether it's your death or the death of someone close to you or the death of literally everyone around you for miles, there's gonna be some death. Death, death, death. That's what happens when you summon the Angel of Death. Get used to it. By the way, does death sound weird to you now? Sounds weird to me. One particularly egregious example of this large-scale killing comes from the story of Passover. In the Hebrew Bible, there's a tale of a pharaoh who refuses to release his Israelite slaves. God brought about a bunch of plagues to convince him to finally set them free, but to no avail. So instead, the Angel of Death was sent to kill the firstborn sons of Egyptians across the land. If the Israelites smeared the blood of a slaughtered lamb on their front door, the angel would pass them over instead of killing one of their sons. This resulted in quite the catastrophe for the Egyptians though. And that wasn't the worst of it either. Killing all of the firstborn sons of an entire empire wasn't enough for the Angel of Death. No sir. Apparently, while protecting Jerusalem from an invading army, this angel wiped out over 180,000 men in one night. Like, I get it, you gotta protect what you gotta protect, but that is a lot of human death. When the casualties number in the hundreds of thousands, you might want to think twice before summoning this angel. It's like dropping a holy nuke on somebody, insane fallout and all. In actuality, folks don't really know exactly what happened when the Assyrians attempted to invade Jerusalem. By all historical metrics, this invading force should have easily taken over the city. However, there are some theories that don't involve literal divine intervention, including mice and the plague that they brought. So what's the better story though, an ill-timed mice-based epidemic or a swooping, slicing, slaughtering angel of death? Coming in at number 4, we've got the Watchers. Now, I'm not so sure if the Watchers were ever summoned per se, or if they just decided to swoop down to Earth of their own volition, but either way, you don't want to encounter this group of angels, or you know what? Maybe you do. There's a few things that they got up to that folks might consider pretty cool, even if they ended up birthing a race of giant creatures that eventually drew the ire of God and got the world flooded. You win some, you lose some. So if you did decide to bring the Watchers down to Earth, you could probably learn a whole lot of cool stuff. And honestly, I've heard that certain people are really into what the Watchers bring to the table in the bedroom. Or I guess the bed in the bedroom. However, these fallen angels are not worth the trouble most of the time. They're known for luring people away from their relatives, their communities, their earthly ties, and having them commit ghastly acts. I won't detail them all because I've got to keep it PG for YouTube's sake, but I'm sure you can imagine what some supernatural beings with powers beyond our comprehension and enough desire to desert literal heaven for some good old-fashioned hedonism might get up to. Oh, I wonder if you could comment this stuff you're imagining, or would that get censored too? Maybe we'll save that for another day. So like I was saying before, the Watchers taught the humans they enchanted all sorts of forbidden knowledge. A Pandora's box moment for sure. Humans were introduced to weaponry, cosmetics, mirrors, sorcery, and more. This doesn't seem all that bad, especially because humans would have probably discovered all of it someday anyways. But humans weren't ready for all of this new mind-altering knowledge all at once. This incredible volume of previously unimaginable stuff really screwed up their brains and made them act in horrible ways. Kinda like how the internet has rotted away a lot of common sense and decency nowadays, but hey. Eventually, with the birth of gigantic monsters, the angels that didn't come to Earth to fornicate with humans decided enough was enough. It was cleansing time. The flood was called and all those who lived on Earth were washed away. Time to start again. So even if having access to Lovecrafty and brain chemistry altering knowledge sounds appealing to you, if you do end up summoning a Watcher to teach it all to you, you might just end up underwater anyways. And not in a cool fun way like Atlantis or a Gungan city, I'm talking concrete shoes off the end of a pier. Coming at number 3, we've got Gabriel from the Prophecy. If Christopher Walken playing the role of an evil angel waging a war against God doesn't get you to watch a movie, I don't know what to tell you. This 1995 religious thriller launched a whole series of sequels, all concerning Archangel Gabriel's many issues with the way things are being run up top. In this flick, Gabriel is full of tricks, malice, and violence. When an angel can descend from heaven and steal souls from evil individuals to turn the tide of a celestial war, you'd better watch out. He's just so perfectly creepy as he slinks around, mercilessly killing people and attempting to kidnap children. Gabriel does not shy away from torture, nor does he feel the slightest bit bad stealing the souls of people to push his own goals forward. All because God didn't listen to him more. Although that arrogance would eventually be his downfall, he caused a whole lot of chaos in his brief time on Earth, and had he succeeded, heaven would have become a second hell. Now isn't that a terrifying proposition? Coming in at number 2, we've got the fallen angels from Gabriel. We just talked about Gabriel the character in another movie, now we're going to talk about Gabriel the movie. In a post-apocalyptic vision of heavenly warfare, we enter Purgatory, which is now corrupted by evil. This forces it to take on the form of a seedy, rundown city where angels and fallen angels must take the forms of humans to exist. This exposes them to human faults and desires. These traits prove much more damaging to angels over time as the fallen angels gain strength from all that debauchery. At times, it's easy to forget that you're watching a movie about angels at all. In the rundown city, every vice possible is there and super exploited. It hinges on absurdity at times, to be honest. These angels and fallen angels indulge in every possible vice and do it to the extreme. We've got angels living in the back of broken down buses, drinking themselves to death. We've got beautiful angels being drugged and employed at brothels. There are people being forcibly given plastic surgery to look exactly like their vain captors and then used as slaves. There are nightclubs full of synthetic drugs to placate and pacify powerful deities. The world is richly imagined, don't get me wrong, and feels like something straight out of an edgy 80s comic book, but these angels and fallen angels hanging out in Purgatory are definitely not ones you want to cross, lest you end up a personal pleasure servant or a junkie in a back alley. And finally at number 1, we've got Angels from Jacob's Ladder. Before the 1990 horror gem, and even before the popular carnival climbing game, Jacob's Ladder was essentially a stairway to heaven detailed in religious texts. Originally cited in a dream by biblical patriarch Jacob, it has been used as a symbol for ascension and more. This vision is very different from what Jacob Singer sees in the movie, but there are many parallels here. After returning from war, Jacob starts experiencing terrifying visions in his day-to-day life. He reaches out to fellow veterans who seem to be having similar experiences. However, the visions intensify and Jacob has trouble separating these supposed hallucinations from reality. Is it that he and his comrades were experimented on by the military, or were they experiencing mental issues before even being cleared for combat? Could it be that these visions are visions from angels, similar to the biblical Jacobs? There's a scene in the movie where a 14th century Christian mystic Meister Eckhart is quoted. He says, "The only thing that burns in hell is the part of you that won't let go of life, your memories, your attachments. They burn them all away, but they're not punishing you, they're freeing your soul. So if you're frightened of dying and you're holding on, you'll see devils tearing your life away. But if you've made your peace, then the devils are really angels, freeing you from the earth." So could these terrifying visions that are slowly degrading Jacob down to nothing actually be angels? It's hard to say, especially when we also learn that Jacob's unit was secretly drugged with a substance meant to increase aggression before heading into combat. So maybe Jacob really was dead the whole time time feeling the effects of the drug leave his body as his life also fades away. Or maybe his death meant that he had to wrestle with angels and demons before being able to move on. Coming in number 5, we've got Sephiroth. Not all angels have 2 wings. Some just have 1, and that's enough to cause more trouble than probably anything else. The story of Sephiroth is a famous one indeed, as he has claimed a spot in the hallowed halls of video game fame. With his recent addition to Smash Bros, his legacy grows even larger, and now it's almost impossible to ignore him in conversations about famous video game villains. But how does he fit in this conversation about angels? Well, don't summon Sephiroth. Just don't do it. There are so many ways he can make your life living hell. Born to a morally depraved scientist and his helpless wife, Sephiroth was injected with cells from Genova, an extraterrestrial being of great power. With this power, he was able to develop into a super soldier of sorts, getting all sorts of tough tasks done for the Shinra company, and inspiring countless soldiers to be like him. The cell implant was only the beginning, as later in his life, Sephiroth began committing terrible atrocities in search of power and revenge. Learning of the experiments done to him and the fate that befell his mother, Sephiroth decided that it was time to annihilate some people. He leveled the Shinra headquarters, killing everyone inside, and who could forget the good old Nibelheim massacre? That famous image of the silver-haired swordsman striding through an inferno? He annihilated an entire town after learning of his origins. This destructive path eventually leads him to being flung into a pool of Mako and entering the life stream, where he learned things about the universe that nobody else could possibly know. Did this make him want to become benevolent and help those who were still shrouded in darkness? No, it made him even angrier. Returning more powerful than ever, Sephiroth attempted to blow up the entire planet by bringing a meteor down upon it. Simpler times. Eventually, he manifests as a terrible quasi-deity with 7 wings and a penchant for destruction. Even after his defeat at the hands of Cloud, he doesn't truly disappear. His legacy is continued on by Geostigma, and his presence is still felt by many. So, while not a true angel, he definitely ascended past mere humanity and became something more. And nobody should be looking to summon him anytime soon. Coming in number 4, we've got Fiore and De Blanc. Now here's an interesting duo. I'm breaking a few rules and conventions here. Firstly, because there's 2 of them, and also because these angels themselves aren't all that bad. But the thing is, if they're summoned, that means something bad has happened. And that bad thing sets a whole lot of other events in motion, eventually leading to God seemingly abdicating his throne and a man who fought during the Civil War taking over heaven. See, these are events you don't want happening, so don't summon Fiore and De Blanc, for your sake and mine. Preacher is an interesting take on religion, to say the least. We've got the Almighty disappearing from his duties, and his divine servants meant to keep the peace and enact his will are all more or less useless. So if you want something done, say the retrieval of a killer angel-demon hybrid who fuses with people and grants them great power, it's best not to leave it to them. But here we are. The inciting incident in Preacher, Jesse Custer fusing with Genesis and gaining the ability to make people do whatever he says, happens because these 2 doofuses can't do their job right. Typical angel. Is that blasphemous? Am I gonna get smited for that? I suppose all these angel videos lately have punched my ticket, might as well go with it. They kick off the series letting everyone know that God has indeed left his throne, which starts a whole array of other events. Then they can't get Genesis back to heaven, so they kinda just accept their failure. These 2 sorry bastards then spend all their time indulging in earthly pleasures and acting all around unangelic. Unbelievable, right? The worst bit is when you put 2 and 2 together, with both Preacher and proper angelic lore. What happens when angels sleep with humans? The Nephilim. That might not be canon in Preacher, but I'll make the lead for ya. Here's a comprehensive guide to what happens when you summon these 2 ineffective angels. They mess up, they inadvertently cause all sorts of goofs, they decide to give it all up and indulge in hedonism, they sire enormous humanoid monsters that bring a world-ending flood. They might seem harmless, but they're gonna be way more trouble than they're worth. Coming in at number 3, we've got Abaddon. Both as a place of destruction and an angel of the abyss, Abaddon is nasty all around. Pretty much invariably, Abaddon is a dark pit of doom. It doesn't matter if you look to the Hebrew Bible or the New Testament, it's bad stuff all the way down with this angel. Like, that name literally translates to doom. Let that set the stage. If we leave Abaddon as a place where it is, we can look at some of the terrors brought about by Abaddon the Destroyer. As an angel of the abyss, Abaddon led legions of horrid locusts. These locusts weren't just regular bugs though. They had the shape of horses, the faces of crowned humans, the hair of women, lion's teeth, enormous wings, iron chest plates, and scorpion tails, stinger and all. Plus, if they sting someone with their tail, that person will suffer great torment for 5 months. That is, unless they have the seal of God on their forehead. Holy smokes. All of these details have made Abaddon a particularly popular angel to depict in horror media, from foul fiends in literature to towns of terror filled with entrances to the lake of fire to wildly powerful entities in video games. So while summoning Abaddon might earn you a solid 5 months of hell on earth, it's also kinda cool to see what happens. Weigh your options carefully. Coming in number 2, we've got Uriel. If you like your reproductive organs unsliced, you'd best avoid Uriel. See, there's an old story that makes me wonder about angelic priorities. Moses almost died because he and his wife were lax with a bit of non-essential surgery for their son. In the book of Genesis, the removal of a piece of skin at the end of a particular body part is considered mandatory. It guarantees that covenant between you and God. So when Moses and his wife Zipporah hadn't gotten around to slicing and dicing their son's parts, God sent Uriel to exact swift revenge. According to the story, he was moments away from dropping Moses on the spot, but Zipporah swept in with a particularly sharp rock and did the deed. Casting the bloody bits of their son upon Moses' feet, Uriel accepted this and refrained from ending the man's life. So if you're not careful, you could anger the Lord for something seemingly insignificant and he might send Uriel after you. And if we're being honest, that's not a way anyone wants to go. So when you sign up to be a part of something like that, maybe check the rules and regulations extra close, lest you get put in the ground for not having your tonsils removed or something. And finally at number 1, we've got Jophiel. Widely known as the Archangel of Beauty, you would think that this angel would be cool to summon. Sure, the heavenly beauty might be too much for your human mind to handle, but at least you'd go mad seeing something unspeakably radiant. Here's the thing though, Jophiel doesn't suffer any fools, and we're all fools. Hell, the first humans to ever roam the earth, Adam and Eve, found this out firsthand. After consuming the forbidden fruit and gaining its hidden knowledge, Jophiel was the one to kick them out of the Garden of Eden. Break the rules? Get booted. I don't know if that can be considered tough love, it's probably just tough. So summoning Jophiel probably means that you've recently done something that goes against God's will, and for most folks that is not something they're super enthusiastic about doing. Plus, Jophiel is said to wield an enormous flaming sword, and as bad as that is, you probably don't ever want to be on the receiving end of it. Coming in at number 5, we've got Asmodeus. A lot of folks take great issue with some of those classic vices, you know the ones, sex, rock and roll, all plenty of fun, all the bane of Puritans and teetotalers across the globe. If you delve too deeply into any of the above, you could find yourself receiving plenty of disapproving looks. Too bad, considering how much folks tend to enjoy these things. Is it possible to have too much of a good thing? Hard to say, especially these days. Who knows when the good won't be available anymore. However, traditionally folks have looked down upon those consumed by lust, whether it be carnal, money-focused, or otherwise. Thankfully, you can blame a demon for all those urges. Isn't life funny that way? Who made up morality anyways? Why not just explain it all away by saying it's totally out of your control? Beautiful, it makes up for everything. So we've got Asmodeus, the supposed son of Adam, once an angel of harlotry. Of course, his angelic properties aren't really around anymore as he fell from heaven and now lives as a demon in the underworld. With time, he became more well known for stuff like gambling and lust, and somehow became Lilith's husband, which is fun. The two of them, both labeled temptresses, produced all sorts of demonic babies to keep the fires of hell hot. There's also the famous story of Asmodeus killing 7 husbands in a row to keep one woman from consummating her marriage. Like, every time she got married, Asmodeus would show up and murk her husband before they could do the deed. But then she'd go out and get married again. At some point you think she'd learn and see a pattern and stop feeding her suitors to a demon, but hey, maybe she liked the demonic attention. Asmodeus is pretty wicked looking too. Rocking 3 hideous heads, this demon gets around by riding a dragon. This isn't his only look though, as he can appear as a few other forms to appeal to different types of people. I mentioned gambling before, and anyone with that kind of habit can thank Asmodeus for it. Gotta love it. Lastly, his powers do tend to get stronger in November, so once Halloween wraps up, be on the lookout. Lust might not stick around as easily once everyone puts away their sexy costumes, but hey, Coming at number 4, we've got Abisithebu. Rocking with another fallen angel here, we've got Abisithebu. A little tougher to say and spell, but just as scary and powerful. Raunchy as all hell, too. See, Abisithebu left heaven at the same time as the devil himself and didn't take the fall that well. He used to be a flatterer of God, but once he took that trip to the down below, things got ugly. If you're familiar with the most legendary gaming villain of all time, you'll see some inspiration here. While falling, Abisithebu was used as a life raft of sorts by other fallen angels. They grabbed at his body and managed to take hold of one of his wings. This led to the feathered appendage being torn off, leaving our poor demon to be with only one wing. Eventually it did sort of grow back, but not as it was. Abisithebu is known for having a red, grotesque wing. That's how many recognize this demon. Badass, but probably really upsetting to deal with after many lifetimes of perfect angelic wings. Like I said, once he made it to hell, things went extra south. He rules over Tartarus, which is essentially hell jail. All of the worst reside here, suffering eternal torment in a cage of their own creation. How lovely. Abisithebu also has quite the command of sorcery, able to cast powerful spells and persuade influential figures to act in unholy ways. For these reasons and more, it was decided that this demon could no longer have sway over humanity. Abisithebu was eventually trapped in a pillar of air, meant to be trapped for eternity. Tough break for sure. However, many do believe that Abisithebu will return one day and bring with him thousands of years of fury after being trapped so long. His red wing will unfurl and he will return to his vengeful and cruel ways. Who's excited? Coming in number 3, we've got Duma. Already we can see the negative implications in a name like Duma. You know, Duma. You get it. With all the angel talk we've been up to lately, I'm actually surprised it took me this long to properly bring up supernatural. Crazy, I know, but here we are. Sure, Duma isn't like a mainline villain for very long, but she gets up to all sorts of wickedness in a relatively short period of time. Realizing that angels are dying out, she looks for other options to keep her kind alive. She realizes that capturing and enslaving a Nephilim could be the solution to her problems, and begins to search immediately. This brings her to Gadriel, who refuses to cooperate, as the angels enslaving the Nephilim Jack could end poorly for everyone. Thus begins a long struggle between Duma and Gadriel, resulting in the former taking up the throne of heaven. Her rule was one characterized by an iron fist. Usually heaven is seen as a place of peace and prosperity where everyone has their needs met and can live in paradise. Under Duma, that's not so much the case. She quickly turned it into a merciless prison where human souls were often beaten into submission. Damn. In order to keep her power, she even threatened to destroy John and Mary Winchester's shared heaven. However, that did turn out to be the wrong move, and if you know why, you know why. But yeah, unless you want to be beaten to your knees while in the paradise that is heaven, don't summon Duma. Coming in number 2, we've got Merkin, mother of spiders. Seems less than angelic, but she's an angel alright, or maybe a demon. Boy, you better watch out around her though. She appears as an envoy with Azrael and is just the image of hideousness. Lumpy, horrifying, and with a womb full of spiders, she's more than most would be able to handle. However, she's supposedly based on a photograph titled Amor, New Mexico, 1987, so someone's gotta love her. I just don't know if that's something anyone is interested in doing. 8-legged freaks from a fallen angel envoy doesn't sound like much fun, if you ask me. And finally, at number 1, we've got Adam and Lilith. Yeah, I'm breaking the rules with doubles again, so sue me. Here we have the 2 top dogs when it comes to angels in Evangelion. Everyone has their favorite, or least favorite, of these celestial beings threatening humanity as we know it, but there's no denying that these 2 are at the head of the hierarchy. These 2 seeds of life are responsible for all of the life forms on Earth, with Adam creating the destructive angels and Lilith creating the humans. Their power is unmatched, and their creations will never know peace, especially during the events of Evangelion, when the angels consistently attack and destroy bastions of humanity. When your last hope against an enemy of this scale is a bunch of unstable teens in mech suits, you'd best be worried. These are not kind angels, they're not even vengeful, they're destructive like nothing else, and will not stop until everything is in pieces. Damn.